Sure. Okay, yay, Heather, we are live. So welcome everybody, I'm Sara DiVello, and today is the launch of our Mighty Mystery Author Interview Series, which I will be hosting going forward. And today we kick off with none other than New York Times bestselling author Heather Gudenkauf, here to talk to us about her brand new book, This Is How I Lied. Yay! Heather, tell us about the book.
Well, I'm so excited to share it with you. So This Is How I Lied is a story about teenager Eve Knox, who we learn very quickly meets her demise and is found by her little sister Nola and her best friend Maggie in some caves near her home. And there are several suspects in the beginning, but not a lot of evidence to arrest anybody. So very quickly the case goes cold. And 25 years later, we find that Maggie's all grown up. She's a police detective with her local police department and 7 months pregnant. And new evidence in the case of Eve's death is discovered. And then Maggie very quickly gets drawn into the case, and she starts digging and looking at clues and uncovering truths. And lo and behold, somebody out there doesn't want anything to be discovered about what happened that night in the caves. And so Maggie finds herself fighting for her life and the life of her unborn child.
Oh my gosh, I am already 100% sucked in. And of course, I am not the only one. New York Times bestselling author Gilly McMillan says, This Is How I Lied, Gudenkauf proves herself the master of smart, suspenseful, small town thrillers that get right under your skin. That is but one of many, many rave reviews. So I think we are all super excited because there's something about unsolved cases, cold cases that are just so riveting, so fascinating. I think we're all sort of intrigued by the idea that that someone could potentially get away with a crime and can justice be procured. So tell us about how that hooked you in and why you wrote about that.
Yeah, so I read, like many people did a few years ago, I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, which is a journalistic view of the Golden State Killer and the case. And at the time she wrote the book, she had put together all her just very thorough research. And unfortunately, she passed away before the case was solved, but soon after, familial DNA was used to find a probable suspect in the case. And I became fascinated by that. And I just wanted to incorporate a piece of that into my own novel, and how a case that could lay dormant for decades could suddenly be revitalized by some of these ancestry sites that we've heard about so much lately. So that's where the beginning of the idea started.
Oh, it's so interesting, and it ties together so many different topics. Again, the idea that someone could get away with a horrific crime, the idea of DNA, and sort of, that we could be found by this or found out by this, or that this could be valuable clues. It's all so tasty, Heather. I'm excited. So how long did it take you to write this book?
So it took me about a year. I write my first draft rather quickly. I call it ugly writing. I just get it all down on paper or on the computer, and then I go back, and that's when the real work begins and the heavy revisions. And so I would say it took about a year from beginning to end to get it all put together.
Yeah, that's fast. I think that's it. I mean, I'm currently 6 years in to my next project, so I am in awe. I'm genuflecting to your mystery genius. And tell us about your path to publication. Was it smooth and breezy? Were you hacking on your path through the jungle? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I was a third grade teacher when I started writing, and I had just packed up my classroom for summer break, and I started writing The Way to Silence, my first book, that summer, and finished the ugly first draft at the end of summer, when I went back to put my classroom back together, and then I stuck it in a drawer. And a few months later at winter break, I pulled it out again and asked myself, what can I do with this? And I got a great book called The Writer's Market. And I found a literary agency listed in the pages that represented books that I liked, and I sent the first 50 pages of The Way to Silence off. And thankfully, they liked what they saw and represented me. It took a year and a half to get the book in really good shape before it was ready to send to publishers. So then it took another year and a half to find a home for This Is How I Lied. And so in between that year and a half, when the queries were being sent out and the manuscript, I did get many rejections, but just need one home, and I was fortunate to land where I did.
Oh, that's so awesome. And thank you for sharing all those details with us, because that's always one of our most popular questions is people want to know, what was that like? And so thank you for your transparency. I think I'm also just sort of very intrigued that a third grade teacher could be writing these mysteries by night. I just love the juxtaposition of a sweet third grade teacher, being with our youth in the morning and then going home and writing about death.
Right. Yes, I wouldn't recommend them for third graders for sure. But I was lucky. I get the same question about growing up. What kind of house did I grow up in? That I can write such things. And I always say, well, fortunately, I grew up in a great home where my parents allowed me to be creative and really honored that in me and encouraged that. So I'm able to separate the two.
I love that. And I was reading on your bio that you grew up in South Dakota, and you would often climb into a little box with your books.
Yeah, so we had a toy box that my dad was a guidance counselor out in South Dakota on Rosebud Indian Reservation, and the students built our family a toy box when we were getting ready to move away. And so that was my go-to place to get away from my 5 older brothers and sisters and from the craziness of the household. And I'd climb in with my books and a flashlight. And that's really where I learned to read, and really my love for reading began, and then writing.
I love this image of baby Heather in a little box, with her little flashlight, reading by flashlight at night.
Yeah, and it's even, it is sweet. And, actually I'm sitting here where I do my work, and the toy box is sitting right next to me. You can't see it, but my parents painted it up and put lovely little stencils on it and gave it to me as a wedding gift for when my husband and I got married. So my own kids have played in and out of there as they grew up too. So.
Oh my gosh, Heather, that's so cute. I love it. That's really, really lovely. So as you have been, transitioning from being a passionate reader and now, of course, a writer, what's some of the worst writing advice that you've ever got?
Everybody's so, everybody wants to give good advice, and what works for one person might not work for another person. But I think the one that's the most leading, and I think it's very common for people to get, is when someone tells you write what you know. Because I think if you only do that, then, my life is quite boring, thankfully. And that wouldn't make for a great book, a great story. So, I think, of course, you want to be knowledgeable in what you're doing and what you're writing, but more importantly is research what you're writing to make sure it sounds authentic and reads true. But I think it's important to also try to stretch yourself and stretch your limits a little bit on what you do write and go outside of your comfort zone.
That's such a good point, right? Because not all of us can be DNA researching, cold case revealing private investigators or detectives.
Right.
Tell us about your research process. How did you make sure that you got it right?
Sure. So I'm very fortunate. My children went to school with our police chief's children in town. So he has been for years my go-to person when it comes to police procedurals and what is realistic and what isn't. So I will email him dozens of times while I'm writing a book. And when I get to a certain part, I'll email him and say, hey, Mark, it's me again. Could this happen? And then he'll say, well, no, that isn't how we do things. And I'll say, well, I really need this to happen. Can you help me get there? And he'll brainstorm ideas with me. And he's been nothing but generous and patient with my questions. So any errors on police procedures are totally mine. So that was a big part of this story. There's a veterinarian in the story, and so I wanted to get some background on that. So I reached out to some very great people who are in the veterinarian field, and they told me a lot about their day. So every project is very different, but definitely I have to go to those experts to try and get things right.
What was something you got really wrong on the police front that your friend, the police chief, Mark, had to rein you in? He had to pump the brakes.
So this is kind of funny. It was several books ago. It was my book, One Breath Away, and it's the story of a school intruder. And the school intruder is in this classroom, and this teacher, great teacher, is trying to protect her students. And I told Mark, I want her to throw, those heavy duty staplers that from elementary classrooms that are like 100 pounds, I wanted her to throw one of those at the villain. And I wanted the villain to shoot it out of the air, and he said that would never, ever, ever happen. He would have to be like the best marksman in the world to get that. And so it didn't get in the book quite that way. But I really wanted it to. But he would, he sets me straight when things aren't quite kosher on the page. So
I think I'm just sort of fascinated by the idea of this, stapler tossing, sharpshooting, endeavor happening. I think
it's out there, isn't it? Yeah. So it would have been quite the sight.
Cool. It would be so cool. I mean, wasn't Annie Oakley, the famous sharpshooter, wasn't she famous for lighting her husband's cigarette with a bullet? Like he would, put a cigarette and then she would light it from 50 yards away, narrowly missing his face.
Yes, yes.
I'm having an Annie Oakley kind of moment with the stapler.
Yes, yes. So it would have been great, but it wasn't quite realistic.
Yeah, that would have been super cool though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If only Mark had not ended. If only Chief Mark had not ended the fun for that.
Yes, he did.
Heather, what's your favorite scene from this book, from your current book, from This Is How I Lied? Staplers aside, tell us about your favorite scene from the new book.
So I think my favorite scene is there's several scenes in the caves where some of the action in the story takes place, and many people do not realize that Iowa has cave systems. When you think of Iowa, you think of fields of corn and soybeans, and we definitely have that. It's beautiful, but we also have the Mississippi River, the Missouri River, we have bluffs, we have hills, we have woods, and we have cave systems. So one of my favorite scenes comes near the end of the book in the cave system, where Maggie, now a police detective in her hometown police department, is literally stuck between in a hard spot, and it's scary. I mean, the caves are dark, they're dank, there's some evil lurking nearby, and so it's very atmospheric. It was really fun to write, and I think readers will enjoy that.
And what was your cave? I mean, caves are innately scary. So what was your cave research process like? Did you go into the caves in Iowa, which I didn't know existed, by the way?
Yeah, so we have a series of caves, several series of caves not far from where I live, but I went to this great place. It's called Maquoketa State Park. And there are all different kinds of caves there. Some are, for regular folks where you can just walk through, and but there's some, and I didn't quite go this far, but there's some where you actually have to, you have to have a headlamp, you have to crawl through, and it's pretty amazing. It's a really beautiful place, and it's a great place to explore.
Oh, that's so cool. Now I want to come to Iowa and go. Is it spelunking, cave exploring?
It's not quite like that. It's not as in depth as that, and not where we're at, but yeah, definitely it's an experience for sure.
So Heather, tell us about your writing process. Do you rise with the sun, run to your desk? Do the words flow out of you? Tell us, are you a morning writer? Are you a night writer? Do you struggle for every word? Does it flow with ease? Let's get a glimpse inside of Heather at her desk.
It's all of what you said, all rolled into one. So it really depends on the day. I'm not really a morning or night writer. I can sit down and write just about any time. And I think that comes from my children are grown now, but when they were younger, you know, with all the activities and running them places and school and work, I would just write whenever I could. It would be before they got up in the morning, after they went to bed, weekends. So I'm pretty adaptable when it comes to writing, at least times of the day. You know, it really varies what my process is like. I'd like to say that I'm one who outlines and plots everything out. And I've tried that, and usually that does not work for me.
Mm-hmm.
The characters tend to take over and lead me in directions that I didn't think I was going to go. And so I write a very ugly first draft, and then the real work comes in the revising for me. So, you know, every word is hard fought during those revision process, you know, which ones stay, which ones go.
Yeah, revision is my least favorite stage for sure. So when the characters, so since you're more of a pantser versus a plotter, and the characters are leading you, you're able to trust them to surrender the reins, the control, let them take the wheel. Do they ever lead you into a dead end cave where you then have to back on out, or does it just always work out? What's that
No,
look
all
like?
the time they lead me to some dead ends. And again, it varies from project to project, but you know, they become like they're their own personalities. And it's really important. I think one of the key things that I've learned over the years with writing is that, you know, you have to be really true to the characters and know their ins and outs, what they're like, their likes, their dislikes, their fears, their hopes, and their actions need to reflect that personality. Otherwise, it doesn't ring true. And so that's been something over the years that I think I've gotten better at. I hope I've gotten better at, where what a character does makes sense based on that world I've created for them and that personality that I've created.
I love that. I feel that on a deep, visceral level. I love everything you just said. It really resonates. Because I think that's hard for all of us, both on the page, for the writers among us here, and for people in general, just in your daily life, to actually just let people be who they are, right? We've all had that experience in our, you know, relationships, friendships, family relationships, whatever, where you want people to be a certain way and they're just not. And that process of letting go and letting them be who they are is an interesting one, and often a challenging one.
Right.
So what is one thing you want people to feel when they're reading this book, or what do you want when people leave this book? What do you want them to have experienced?
Well, I know for me, especially with the pandemic and social distancing, and I've always turned to books in many aspects of my life for escape or comfort, or escape mostly. And I really hope that This Is How I Lied is that for people. It's, you know, it's kind of a wild ride. It's, you know, it's dark and twisty and a little bit unsettling, but it's a different kind of unsettling than what we're experiencing right now in the world. And I hope that readers will pick it up and just be transported for a few hours and come away with, you know, wow, that was a fun ride. That was exciting. A good read.
I love that. And it's so true. Books have always also been my escape. And especially now, you know, of course, I'm staying home. I'm being, you know, doing my part to be, you know, contribute to social distancing and you know, be safe at home. But my attention span has shrunk to the size of a tiny little flea. Like basically I can only be entertained by animal videos or funny videos or mysteries, because they're so, you know, they suck me in and they're so interesting and exciting. And that's the one genre that I have been able to read through the pandemic for that exact reason. So thank you for providing that to the readers. And I think that that's something that we can all sort of look forward to is having that escape. That's, you know, that'll be much needed and much appreciated by so many people. So thank you for that. let's talk about writerly dreams. Do you see this book ideally ending up on the big screen, a Netflix series, a TV series? What would be best for This Is How I Lied?
Oh gosh, well, I would take either. Either one would be fabulous. But I always look, when I'm writing a book, I always create, when I'm focusing on the characters, I always have a notebook where I have I'm describing the characters and all their traits and likes, dislikes, all that. And I always, we get the snapshot on the page, and but I see before that what gets on the page, and I, envision what happens afterwards. And I think what would be fun would be a series where you could, like a Netflix, extended series where you could get to know the characters and their backstory and, their forward story. And I think that would be really fun. It's a nice dream to think about.
And who would be starring as these
Goodness.
sisters in the series or this film?
Okay, so I would say, oh gosh, for Eve, I cannot think of her name, and I'm ashamed because she's such a great actress. She was in Unbelievable.
Toni Collette.
Yes, she would be great as the older version, and the younger version, also in that same series, is the teenage girl who played in Unbelievable, would be the younger version of Eve. So I think that would be amazing. And then I think Amy Adams would be great as Nola. I just think she could nail that. That person, so she's such a complex character, and I think Adams would be fabulous. And then for Maggie, oh gosh, I picture Carrie Russell. I just think she would be a great fit too. So it's fun to think about.
And are we talking Carrie Russell in Dawson's Creek? Or are we talking Carrie Russell in The Americans?
The Americans.
Yes.
For Maggie. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The adult Maggie.
Adult Maggie. Yeah, I love Carrie Russell. Love Amy Adams. Love Toni Collette. I've loved her since Muriel's Wedding. She's so phenomenally talented. So when you're doing your vision boards of these characters, and I love that you said that what we see on the page is only a snapshot, because I think that's something that most people don't know, is how much gets cut, right? And how much work gets put into creating these characters, how much then gets cut. So you're actually only seeing the good cuts. But it takes so much more than that to create a truly dynamic, truly complex, layered, fascinating, real person. So do you picture these actresses when you're creating these characters, or do you fill those in later, sort of mentally?
No, I do. It's a process as I go, but I use, I've been using Scrivener, which is a great application for writers if you choose to. I'm very visual, and I do snapshots of what I think the character might look like, and settings, and just everything. And there's little bulletin boards in this program where you can tack up pictures, virtually on your pages, and it really helps me as I focus. And so that's been a great resource for me as well.
So fellow Scrivener writer here. I love Scrivener. My best friend, Amy, who's also a writer, was telling me for years I needed to get on Scrivener. And I resisted stubbornly because I was like, Mama ain't got time to learn a new program. I need to live and die by Microsoft Word. And she was like, get Scrivener, you fool. Yeah. And of course she was right, because she always is. And Scrivener is a lifesaver. So for all the writers who are listening, get yourself to Scrivener. It's the best $39 you will ever spend. And just the ability to move the chapters around and not wear that finger out scrolling is a lifesaver.
Yeah, it's a great organizational tool. Absolutely. And and a great warehouse to house your ideas, and an online portfolio of a scrapbook of items for your book. So
yes. Well, thank you for that tip. Do you have any other writerly tips you'd like to share with our audience, Heather? What are your gems, either writing advice or tools that they should use like Scrivener? Anything else any wisdom you'd like to impart to us?
I always recommend Anne Lamott's book, Bird by Bird. for readers, and I think that's one that's pretty well known, but I go to it, revisit it all the time. And one of my two favorite parts of it, of course, is what the title is based on, Bird by Bird, because writing a book can be incredibly overwhelming when you think of a whole project out in front of you. And Anne Lamott has a tip in there too, and do I have it here? It's a one inch picture frame, she calls it, and I don't know if I have it right here, but she has a little picture frame that she keeps in front of her, and if you envision that scene that you're working on just through that 1 inch picture frame, it will keep you moving forward, because you aren't inundated with where you're going, and it's just what's in front of you. And I keep that on a little ribbon near my desk, so a little picture frame as a reminder. Yeah, so that's my advice. Yeah.
That's so, yes, exactly. And I actually also do the same thing. Because I love that book and have read it until the pages are worn, I went and bought a little 1 inch picture frame and keep it also on my desk as a reminder. I don't have to know the whole story now. I only have to know that little tiny picture frame.
Yes, I've got it right here, tangled up in my earbuds. But yeah, so it's just on a ribbon, and it's just a nice reminder.
I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh, this has been such a lovely chat. I can't believe it, already drawing near the end of our time. So I want to enter the lightning round.
Great.
We're going to get to know Heather a little bit, because nobody leaves the hot seat unknown on a Mighty Blaze. So because we are the Mighty Blaze, we put people in the hot seat. So let's get to know Heather. Heather, do you prefer chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Truth or dare?
Truth.
Do you ideally read on a beach or a mountain?
I would like a mountain any day.
Yes, that makes sense. Mountains are so soothing. Who is one writer you're dying to meet?
So many. I would love to meet Barbara Kingsolver, would be a huge one of mine. The Bean Trees, her first book, is one of my all-time favorites. And so that would be a dream.
She's so wonderful. Would you rather go camping with Bram Stoker or Anne Rice?
Bram Stoker.
Would you rather have a sleepover with Mary Shelley or Shirley Jackson?
Shirley Jackson.
What's one book that has changed your life?
My Antonia by Willa Cather, my all-time favorite book ever. Yeah, I reread it every year. It's beautiful, just beautifully written.
What was your favorite childhood book?
Ferdinand the Bull.
Oh, I loved Little Ferdinand. Yes. What's your favorite movie?
Rear Window, Alfred Hitchcock.
Ooh, yes. Exactly. Oh my gosh, that's such a good one. I love old movies too. Heather, what's one thing that you want people to know about you that probably they don't?
I think I would say, because I write such dark books, I think people might wonder what kind of childhood or, the craziness that I might have grown up in. And I really want everybody to know that I have the best parents in the world, and very normal childhood, and just that they allowed me to be creative. And that is something that I've always really appreciated. I get lots of questions about that. Is like, what kind of childhood did you have? And blissfully happy.
Oh, I'm so happy that you had a happy childhood. And it is, I think, parenting goals to raise a child who feels nurtured and supported creatively and otherwise. I'm so glad that you had that. And yes, that has allowed you to become the writer that you are today and the teacher that you are today. Because I'm not sure if everyone knows, but This Is How I Lied is not Heather's first book. She is also the Edgar Award nominated, New York Times bestselling, USA Today bestselling author of The Weight of Silence, These Things Hidden, Not a Sound, One Breath Away, Little Mercy's Missing Pieces, and Before She Was Found. I mean, you have quite a collection of books under your belt.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been just wonderful.
Well, I'm so excited to read This Is How I Lied. I'm pulling it up one more time. Thank you so much for joining us. Yay, there we are with our, I'm gonna get a screenshot of this. There we are with our books. And I cannot wait to dive into this. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for giving us a glimpse into your writing life, the rest of your life, for sharing these tools, these wisdom, these tricks. Thank you to everyone on Facebook for joining us. We cannot wait for you all to read this book, and we will talk to you all soon.
Thanks, everybody.